A round of applause for Bethan, please.
Okay, so can everyone hear me? Yeah, louder, because I'm that person. Come on, louder. Bit of enthusiasm. We've had scones, that's all good. Excellent. So, things feel pretty shit at the moment, don't they? The 21st century has seen the most temperature records broken in recorded history, yet climate change is ignored at a governmental and institutional level. Democracy is also under threat from the technologically enabled spread of fake news and bad actors on the global stage. And here in the UK, we've had 8 years of crippling austerity, which has imposed poverty and misery on millions. And also corporate entities, and this is across the globe, continue to basically crack down on basic human and workers' rights. We're told repeatedly that now is the time to act if we want to avoid catastrophic climate change, devastating global inequality, and perhaps the end of the human species. And in response to this, lots of businesses talk about being values-driven, purpose-led, ethical, sustainable, responsible, CSR, green, eco-friendly, insert buzzword here. And what I want to talk about is, what do these things really mean? So in the first place, who or what gets to decide what makes a business action or value good? And I'm going to use ethical in this talk to mean good, and I'll talk a bit about that, as opposed to not good, not ethical. And what does an ethical response to these, global massive issues look like for the people in this room who work in or run or want to start a small business? And finally, and maybe most importantly, can we make a difference? Is it worth even trying at this stage? Is it all too late? So, hi, I'm Bethan Vincent. Quickly introduced myself before. So, back in 2013, I became really super interested in the issues of ethics in business. And around this time, there were a lot of organizations, and global organizations especially, talking about these things, about being responsible, purpose-driven, buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. But a lot of them, or most of them, couldn't really back that up with any kind of credible action. And also, no one really understood what these terms actually meant in practice. So I kind of went away and did a lot of thinking about this, and I came up with an ethical certification, Bright Ethics, which is a standard. I know we've kind of trash-talked standards already a little bit today, but essentially I wanted to give people a framework to understand their impact on the world. So it's important to note, kind of from the beginning of this talk really, that I'm not talking about morals or religiously derived ideas of what is good and what is bad. Ethical values, or good values, are values that we as a society have kind of collectively agreed upon. And these values form part of our wider social values. And social values are kind of like the glue that holds us together. They're weirdly intangible, but also generally agreed upon and kind of hard-coded in our daily interactions with fellow human beings and as a society as a whole. So really, we all have ownership of what makes something good versus what makes something bad. We all collectively decide. And in terms of kind of ethical business, I think we have to recognize that we as organizations, small, big, even startups, even freelancers, we have a wider impact on the world we live in. And we kind of can't escape that, unfortunately. We can't live in little silos. And this impact can either be positive or it can be negative, and we are in control over which one that is. So I'm going to start off with a bit of a story. So back in 2013, I had a friend, well, hopefully they still are a friend, and they worked for a national coffee brand in one of their outlets here in York, in the city centre. And they basically were telling me one day over coffee at a much better establishment that this new coffee brand has switched their coffee bean supply over from like a general one to Rainforest Alliance only. And if you don't know about Rainforest Alliance, it's a certification that kind of enforces certain workers' rights and environmental standards. And they were saying that this company had told all its workers that when they served this new coffee to the customer, to basically say like, look, we're being really green and eco-friendly and sustainable and ethical and wonderful. And they were supposed to say that to every single customer. And they were saying to me, right, this is all great and well, great, they've changed the coffee bean supply, but I know I'm serving the customer this coffee in a non-recyclable cup to start with that's going to go straight to landfill. I also know that I'm paid minimum wage, I'm on a 0 hours contract, and sometimes I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford my rent or not. And actually, this organisation, when we get our wages in, they actually take off the cost of our uniforms. So sometimes we're paid under the minimum wage. So I kind of feel like I'm being told to tell the customer that this is ethical when I know for a fact that actually there's all of these other factors that contribute to it. And this really got me thinking, because I think a lot of our organizations, it's quite easy to focus on certain parts of our business, like the supply chain, for example, and try and do some good there. But what we forget is we have an impact across the board. There's so many parts of our business that interact with what I'm going to talk about today. And really what I want to talk about are the areas where we have an impact. And basically, I want to give you a little bit of a kind of framework for thinking about your impact, whether that's positive or negative, and how you can kind of break that down. So, if we accept that to be an ethical business, we need to look beyond siloed areas and kind of take a more holistic view. I don't really like that word, but that's the closest I've got to what I'm trying to explain. How should we be looking at our impact? And I'd argue we have an impact on these three areas. So, people, individuals, planet, and by the planet I mean kind of our natural environment, and communities, so groups of people that have shared characteristics or values. So starting off with people. And the most important group of people to your business are your staff. They are your competitive advantage. And if you're a freelancer or a solo practitioner, you are your competitive advantage. If you don't treat people well, they won't stay with you. And if you want to have the best people in your business, you need to have the best people in your business. And if you want to kind of capture them, inspire them, have them do the best work for you, you need to treat them well. You need to treat them ethically. And this is a topic I'm extremely passionate about, and I could literally stand here for a day, I kid you not, and talk about this. But I'm just going to give you a couple of things to maybe go away and think about in your business. So firstly, at the start, how do you hire? Are you looking for the best people from a diverse range? And I mean diverse in like all of the wonderful ways that humans are diverse. Or are you just looking for people who fit your narrow company culture? Also think about, how are people paid, And by this I mean kind of, in the first place, do you give people enough money to actually thrive, not just survive, but actually bloody well live in this world? And also think about what behaviours you reward with your pay. If you do kind of bonuses or salary rises and things like that, what behaviours are you rewarding with that pay? And also, and most importantly, how do your employees feel about your business? Do they think they're working on something that's worth working on? Do they believe in your kind of values? Do you share values with them? Because we've all worked, I'm sure, in places where we just don't believe in what we're doing. And that's so demotivating. And you're never going to do your best work in that situation. So you want to inspire and motivate people to do their best work. Because at the end of the day, that's going to be what makes you money. The second group of people are customers. Well, I say group of people, I'm going to talk about groups later, but individuals you interact with are customers. And this is really my kind of little framework for dealing with customers in an ethical manner. Again, it's a much wider topic. We could talk on it in detail. But firstly, be honest. It's the simplest thing you can do. Be honest and be transparent as well. And I think that there are two different things for me. Being honest is when a customer asks, saying, yeah, shit, we messed up here. Being transparent is proactively saying, hey, customers, we messed up. But also the final one, and we touched on this earlier in earlier talks, be accessible to people. And this makes so much business sense, right? Because the more people who can access your products and services, the more people who can buy from you. And I think this is the one we ignore the most as businesses. And it comes down to simple things like digital exclusion, accessibility on your website. So just some things to think about there. When it comes to the planet, again, massive topic. But this is just my kind of little framework, again, for thinking about your impact on the planet in your business. And really what I'm trying to say here is what you can measure, and when I say measure, input versus output. What you measure, you can monitor. What you monitor, you can reduce. And when you reduce, you can reward people. You can embed those great behaviors in your business. So the kind of most common one is energy use. Everyone in here, in a business sense, are users of energy in some way. And this is going to sound really inconsequential, but whose job is it to turn the lights off at the end of the day? Do you literally have that as a process where you measure it, you monitor it, you reduce it, and you reward people for that? And you can say, who cares? It's just lights. But, if there's 100, 150, 200 people in this room, if we're all, leaving our lights on in our offices over a year, that cumulatively adds up. It's an important thing. Also, you've got your input versus your output when it comes to consumption and waste. And ideally, you want to reduce your consumption so you reduce your waste, but also reduce your waste as well. And I could go on forever about, it's that triangle you see that's like reduce, recycle, reuse, recover. I'm doing it in the wrong order, but go away and look at that. That's a really lovely framework to use and think about your waste. So, community. We can't do this on our own. We need other groups of people to help our businesses thrive and survive. And community are groups you come into contact with and the kind of line of work you do. So the most common one in this area are suppliers. And just think about, how do you choose your suppliers? Do you have a procurement method? And that can be like 3 simple sets of rules that you've got that you kind of follow. And are you trying to kind of push your ethical values down your supply chain? Are you kind of asking your suppliers those difficult questions on like, where does that really come from? Do you have information on that? And I know there are things like the Modern Slavery Act, which applies to companies over 200 people, but we can take some of that and embed that in our own businesses. Also, we all know the power of supporting local business, and things like the Bristol Pound are great initiatives and kind of helping that. But we as businesses also kind of have an imperative to help each other. And I'm sure, and this is one of my challenges to you, go away and network after this and find one other business you can do business with. Have a discussion about it, because we all know the stats that 7 out of every £10, that's probably wrong, it's something like that, but 7 out of every £10 spent in the local economy stays in the local economy. So your kind of localism, your local communities are really important. So finally, is it worth it? Can we change anything? I'm talking about turning off the lights, for Christ's sake. Well, at the end of the day, we as individuals have control over what we make and how we choose to make it. And you will have decisions that you have to make every day in your line of work that have a positive or negative impact. And just take a moment to actually think about those decisions when you make them. And think about kind of your ethical values and whether you're making decisions along those lines. But I really think the kind of main thing is, and this is what gives me hope, is that together, if we all kind of take action to do something about these issues, even a small way, together we are powerful. Because it's actually our ability as humans to believe in common things and strive for common endeavors that sets us apart from animals. This ability to kind of have a society and believe in intangible things and future. And we wouldn't have got so far without this ability. We wouldn't have money, we wouldn't have culture, we wouldn't have society without this ability to band together and fight for something together. And this is what really gives me hope, because we as humans are bloody good at this. So let's do something about it. That's my challenge to you. Go away and do something about it. So thank you very much. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me. Even if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Happy to have a discussion. The Bright Ethics Standard I mentioned, it's kind of free, open source, people can use it. If you want to get certified, you can talk to us, but take it away. It's a bit of a blueprint to look at ethical things in your business. So yeah, cheers.
Thanks very much, Bethan. And that felt like a really kind of no-nonsense, accessible, here's what you need to think about for SMEs, basically.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Excellent.
Because I think a lot of the discourse around ethics in business can be very academic and inaccessible.
Yeah, and some of the bigger frameworks feel quite unwieldy.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you're trying to apply the UN SDGs to something like a freelance operation, how do you bridge that gap? Have you deliberately steered away from things like B Corp and some of the bigger stuff?
Yeah, and I suppose Bright Ethics itself was a bit of a reaction against that, is that I just want it to be in plain language, like these are the things you can look at, these are the things you can think about doing, but it's also the understanding of like every business has its own unique kind of environment and business, so it's about how you can apply these things in a more kind of generalized manner, I guess.
Yeah. I've been having this really interesting conversation with a friend recently about the hierarchy of impacts.
Oh, yeah.
And what is the most important thing to do? And do you get 10 points for this, but only 2 points for this? Are all impacts equal, or is there a hierarchy?
I don't think it's necessarily useful to think about hierarchy. I think if we kind of were really removed ourselves from this, yes, obviously there's a hierarchy. But for me, it's always like, is it better to have 20% of people making an 80% effort, or 80% of people making a 20% effort? And I think a lot of the discourse around kind of the environmentalism movement, even things like veganism, has been around absolutes. We as humans really hate absolutes. We hate being told what to do, right? And so those things feel really oppositional, and then people are like, well, I'm not going to do anything then. But if we try and coax people into just something, that's why that was my challenge to you, just do something, then we've got a chance.
A word I've heard a lot about recently is microshift.
Yes,
and it doesn't have to be a big, perfect change, but just little things can add up. That seems to resonate.
Yes.
Across the panel, are your businesses doing things like this? Have you thought about it in such a structured way, or is this something that business passes you don't have time for?
I'm interested in that. I thought that was interesting. The structure, that simple structure.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of bits of that we already do, but actually having a nice, simple way that you can then say to someone in the business, right, let's look at, and we'll find the gaps.
Yeah.
And there's some of those gaps, as you say, they're really easy to make a small shift in, just because you hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was very useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it's just highlighting the problem and realising I can do something easy about that. Great. And Mary, I feel like this is going to lead into...
I love it, exactly. She said about turning the lights out. I go crazy, but when you get to my age, you see lights on. It's so important when you multiply that. And even as a voluntary organisation, we have a policy on where we buy from and whether it's ethical and whether we use Amazon as the method of last hope in the world. Yeah. So it is important.
I think that should be their new strapline. That's really good. I'm interested in cracking on because I know some people, we've got to hit time. If you're interested in what Bethan said, as I'm sure you are, please find her afterwards and get more information from her.
Totally.
Round of applause, please. Thank you.